Hey everybody, welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. I have one of my all-time favorite people, Susan Shumsky, and she is going to be talking about her newest book, Maharishi and Me, Seeking Enlightenment with the Beatles Guru. Cool. Because I
Well,
know
I think it's
I remember in your books, or I don't remember where, but I think you mentioned this before, but I never have really dived in to understand that period in your life. So tell me, tell me first of all, how did you even end up going to visit the Maharishi?
yeah. Well, it was the '60s. I was a hippie, and I
Yeah.
was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and all of us who were flower children, we were really seriously seeking spiritual awakening. In
Hmm.
fact, I was seeking specifically for nirvana. So I was reading all these books like Paramahansa Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi. I was reading The Way of Zen by Alan Watts and others of his books. I was reading Tibetan Book of the Dead and many Buddhist scriptures because of the fact that those of us who were taking LSD
Hmm.
and other recreational, they weren't really recreational drugs. So that at the time they were spiritual seeking drugs. So we were seeking specific experiences through those
Hmm.
psychedelics.
And
And the
so,
experiences
yeah.
we were seeking the experience of spiritual awakening.
Hmm.
And I was really desperately trying to find what Alan Watts called a meditation guide. Well, in 1966 in Berkeley, California, you didn't go to the yellow pages and find meditation guide or yoga or anything like that.
Right.
So I asked a roommate, well, how do I find this meditation guide? And then what happened is he said, well, have you ever tried to meditate yourself on your own? And I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I lay down on my bed. That's how clueless I was. I didn't even know that you're supposed to sit up when you meditate. I lay on my bed and I sort of prayed for or asked for a meditation. And I didn't know. And immediately I was propelled into this ecstatic state. I felt this cord or rush of energy rushing from the tips of my toes all the way to the top of my head. And I
Wow.
felt like I was plugged into an electric socket, but in a most ecstatic way.
Wow.
And so I thought, well, I guess this is meditation. I
I
didn't know
love
what
it.
I didn't know. So I thought, well, and then I didn't realize that this was not only my first meditation, but also Kundalini awakening all at the same time. Well, not
Wow.
too long after that, a friend took me to the Transcendental Meditation Center in Berkeley. When he found out that I was seeking for a meditation guide, he
Right.
took me over there. And unfortunately, I was going to have to wait for 9 months before they would teach me meditation, but I did. And
What?
I just waited and waited. And finally, a teacher came and I learned TM. Well, I was so astounded with the results, and it had changed my life so dramatically that I immediately wanted to become a teacher. And I applied for several teacher training courses, including the one the Beatles were on, which I didn't know the Beatles would be there. But I applied for 3 teacher training courses, and they kept rejecting me because I was too young. You had to be a certain
Mm.
age, you had to have completed your education, college, and you had to be, I think, 24 or 27, something like that.
And how
I
old were
was just too
you?
young. At the time, I was 19 when I learned Transcendental
Oh,
Meditation.
wow.
But eventually, they did accept me in for the course that was to begin in 1970. So that's how I ended up there. And my parents were more than happy about it because no longer would I be taking drugs and screwing everything in sight and
So wait, so
the groovy things we did in the 60s.
the Maharishi was a transcendental meditation guy in your
He's the
mind?
one, he's the one that founded Transcendental
I had
Meditation.
no idea. Oh, I
He
guess I didn't
is
know
the
that.
one he's the one that made meditation a household word in the 20th century.
And meditation is now grown and has all these different flavors. How is
Well,
transcendental meditation different than the myriads of meditation out there, and how is it similar?
yeah, it's specific technique. It's a technique that uses mantras in a very specific way. And it's a deep meditative technique. It's not like a walking meditation or a mindfulness meditation or anything like that. It's for the purpose of going into very deep, deep silence and into what we call transcendental consciousness, into a transcendental state where you are in that state that the yogis call samadhi. They call it samadhi, which means evenness of mind and stillness of body. So it is a state of yoga, meaning union with the divine. And it's a very good technique. It's a powerful, amazing meditation technique that I highly recommend anyone who wants to learn how to meditate. Transcendental meditation is a great meditation.
Okay, so and nowadays we have guided meditation, which there's a lot of talking and visualization, and then there are things like mindfulness, which is like how do you watch where your mind is going, and then there's kind of walking meditations, eating meditations, there's yoga, there are all sorts of different meditations, and so this is how this one is different, this transcendental meditation. And what's interesting is, I guess I don't know what kind of meditation I'm doing, but I'm leaning towards the kind that brings you stillness, because much like yourself, I was in a meditation retreat, and then all of a sudden my arms started shaking and my body started shaking, and then my arms started wailing, and then I was breathing funny, and I'm like, what the heck is happening to me? And I've had these kind of, I mean, it's been 2 years, and I haven't really cultivated this, whatever this Kundalini awakening is. I've started just 6 months ago to kind of start breathing and like trying to understand what this is. So, and I'm so far away from stillness. So you started in the same kind of like you were having a Kundalini awakening. How did you move from what you were experiencing to a sense of stillness, or did you start off with this sense of stillness?
No, I didn't start off. I didn't know how to meditate. I didn't know a thing. So I went and learned. And once I learned how to do it, I immediately started having incredible experiences of the transcending, meaning unbounded awareness, deep stillness, the experience of perfection, the experience of utter contentment, the experience of expansion, expanded consciousness, meaning limitless awareness. And it was very profound. And so I did everything I could to take all the courses, to go to retreats, to go to India and become a teacher and all of that. But I did a lot more than that. I actually joined Maharishi's staff. I ended up 6 years on his international staff, and I ended up 22 years total in his various ashrams, in the various
you were there for 22 years?
22 years in his various residential facilities all over the world, not just India, but in Europe, Spain, Austria, Italy. Also, I was in Fairfield, Iowa in the United States, but also in the Himalayas in India, in Rishikesh. So all of these places, and I was with him it was with his organization, and I was under his tutelage for 22 years.
Oh
total.
My gosh, that's incredible. Are there very many people that have been under his tutelage for 22 years? That's phenomenal.
There are quite a few. A lot of them live in Fairfield, Iowa, actually, which is a kind of a Maharishi, I guess they call it now. They call it Maharishi University of Management. It used to be called Maharishi International University. So, yeah, there are, a few thousand people that have been with that organization for a very long time.
Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit.
But hardly anyone was on his personal staff for 6 years.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible.
That was unusual.
So I want to talk to you about the guru process, for you, as I understand it, it's like, there weren't very many meditation guys running around. So like this was one. But how did you know that this was, that Maharishi was the person, to the point that like you spent 6 years as, his personal person, and then also 22 years, like how did you know?
Okay, well, the minute I saw his picture on the wall in the meditation center, that was it.
Really?
I was sold. It's just, I sort of fell into transcendental love with that picture in the meditation center, and I realized this is the man that I need to learn from. This is it.
So it was
And
a felt sense then, a felt sense of
yes,
love. And this is in Berkeley in the meditation center?
exactly, in Berkeley. Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, wow.
And then I met him. Let's see, the first time I met him was a couple months after I learned to meditate. I think it was actually the next month. He was in Los Angeles. He was giving a lecture there, and so a few of us drove down in a couple cars, and we met him at the airport. And everybody was lined up in a double row for him to pass through a corridor of devotees and followers, and they all had really nice flowers to give him, and all I had was my little flowers that I had picked, wildflowers, along the
Oh, that's
my
sweet.
droopy, sad little wildflowers. And I was so nervous, and I was cold and clammy, and I just felt a tremendous amount of fear to meet
Oh,
him. I was so nervous. I don't know. I don't know why, but I was just totally nervous and shy. And finally, he came along the corridor, meeting, looking at everyone, smiling, taking their flowers, very gracious, very warm,
oh.
very loving. And then he got to me, and he stopped, and he looks me up and down and up and down. And I looked like a ridiculous hippie. I had on my granny glasses and no bra, and my rayon thing, a dress, schleppedica dress that I had gotten from the junk store, and my clunky sandals, my clunky horde-looking hippie sandals that were these clunky straps and everything. I looked totally stupid, and all my beads and everything, my granny glasses. So he looks at me and he scowls
He
in disdain.
scowls.
In disdain, unlike all the warmth and love he was giving everyone else. He grabbed my flowers and said Jai Gurudev, and I said Jai Gurudev, and
What does Jay
that was
Gurudev
my.
mean?
It means hail to the divine guru, meaning his guru, and that was how he greeted everyone all the time.
Right.
So that, so that was my first encounter with Maharishi.
Oh.
Now, the reality is, once I read about some other gurus and how they met their gurus, I read about all the wonderful, wonderful uh, encounters where they had been together in past lives, and now they were home and they were back, and their guru greeted them with great love. And then I read about Yogananda and his guru. Yogananda is the man who wrote Autobiography of a Yogi. He's a very famous yogi.
Yeah.
I read his, and he said, and at first, yeah, there was the recognition, and there was the balloons and the lollipops and the blossoms, and it was all
Right.
good and cool. But then his guru, it was just a few minutes. His guru said, "I want you to go back to Calcutta," and Yogananda was like, "No, I'm not going. I'm not going to do that." And then his guru said, "Well, I'm not going to, the next time you see me, I'm not going to easily accept you as my disciple." And he was really mean to Yogananda right away. And Yogananda, and then he said to him, "And when you go to see your parents, are they going to just think that you're useless? Are they gonna reject you?" And so what he did immediately, his guru, is he pushed his buttons. And that's what Maharishi did with me. He didn't take any time. He didn't waste any time in starting to push my buttons. So that's what he did, and that's what I certainly wouldn't compare myself to Yogananda. I'm not any kind
No,
of great
but you're
saint
saying
like
like
him.
that's the kind of way, in some ways, the fact that he looked at you in disdain was because do you think at some level he knew that there was going to be some type of deep relationship with you, and so why not get started
Absolutely.
now?
Absolutely. And as you say that, I'm getting incredible chills, because the reality is he obviously knew that I was going to be one of his, very devoted people for a very long time.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what happened. And he probably also saw that someday I would be writing this book.
Right.
In
Oh,
fact,
right.
I know that
Oh,
because
my goodness. That's true.
when I was on his staff, he asked me to. Well, actually, he didn't ask me to do this. Okay, so when I was in India, uh, I was after the course. The course lasted for 3 months. It was from January to April of 1970. Well, some of us didn't leave. We just kind of stayed after the class. And at one point, there was about 15 people. And every night we would go onto the roof of his bungalow, and we would read the Vedas,
Hmm.
which is ancient Indian scriptures, with Maharishi, and he would comment on them and so on. Well, one night we were sitting there, and he was talking about the trees that he could see from his viewpoint. The trees in the ashram. There were some lights that were strung through the trees, and the trees sort of looked like they had a halo, or they were celestial looking because of the light reflected. And so he made an analogy between those trees and higher states of consciousness.
Hmm.
And then the leader of the Transcendental Meditation organization in America, his name was Jerry Jarvis, he turned to me and he said, "Hey, someone should make a picture of those trees." He knew I was an artist. Okay. And he said
Mm-hmm.
that someone should make a picture of those trees. So I did. I made a picture of the trees and showed it to Maharishi, and he was delighted with the whole thing.
Hmm.
And then he said, "Well, the trees should be like this, and you should also show the picture, the people in the picture." So I did that. And then the next time I showed it to him, and by the way, this went on for like 10 years, this process.
You mean the
The next
picture
time,
or like him?
the picture went on for 10 years. The next time I showed it to him, he said, "Oh, I should be sitting up instead of lying down, and the people should look like this." And then the next time I showed it to him, he'd say, "Oh, I can't really see the people that well. The people, you should make it clearer." And then the next time I showed it to him, he says, "Oh, well, I think the people really, I should be able to recognize the people." And it
Oh,
went on and
wow.
on and on. Well, at one point, it was okay. It was 1976, and he called me one time, and he called me to see him one time, and he said, bring the painting of the trees and the people." This was 6 years later, right? And he says, "Now, uh, this painting," and by the way, at one point he wrote a commentary to go with the painting.
Oh, wow.
Scary. And so then in 1976, when he called me, he said he actually took a piece of paper and he took his marking pen and he made a line down the center of the paper. And he said, "On this side will be the commentary, and on this side will be the painting." And he said, "And it'll be in a book." And I said, "A book? What are you talking about, a book?" I said, "Not a poster or pamphlet, or, what are you talking about?" He said, "No, a book." And then he dropped the subject. That was it.
Wow, that's mysterious. Okay, so did it appear in a book? What
Yeah,
happened?
it's in the book I just wrote. It's in this book, Maharishi and Me, Seeking
Wow.
Enlightenment with the Beatles Guru. That's the book.
Oh my God.
He knew I would write this book.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's
And by the
so
way, at the
beautiful.
time, I wasn't a writer. I was an artist. He called me Susan the Artist. My nickname was Susan the Artist. I never wrote anything. I had never,
Wow.
nothing.
Oh my goodness. Wow, I'm just still just okay. All right, so I have a question about the picture that you kept on painting, that you kept on doing over and over again. Which would, for many people, they'd be like, okay, forget it, I'm out, like, but you, you kept on doing this for like 10 years.
Okay,
Why?
so there's a very famous book called Milarepa, and
Hmm.
it's about an ancient saint named Milarepa and his guru Marpa. And I actually read that book way back when, in 1966 or something like that. I had read that book,
Hmm.
and that book was about the relationship between a master and disciple.
Hmm.
In the case of Milarepa, his guru kept telling him to build buildings. He built a tower, he built a hut, he built all these buildings in different shapes. And then as soon as he built the building, his guru told him to dismantle the building and put every stone and everything that was in that building back to its original place.
Oh my goodness.
And he had him build all these buildings over and over and over. Well, this was the way that Marpa was burning off the karma, what we call burning off karma, or burning off negative karma, it really is what it is, for his disciple Milarepa. And this is really the way that gurus, one of the ways that gurus work with their disciples. Not only are they helping their disciples to get better and to expand and to develop and express more of their own true nature and their own creativity, but also they're helping the disciple by burning off, by alleviating or ameliorating is more accurate, ameliorating the negative results from past actions that they would otherwise have to suffer if the guru didn't do some of these things. And some of the things that Maharishi did, I mean, that painting was nothing compared to the other stuff.
Okay, so you said that he was helping your creativity. He was trying to ameliorate your karma. And what was the other thing you said? I can't read my writing, but so as you were doing this painting after, is it painting or a drawing? Because a painting to me is way more arduous. That's way more arduous than the drawing. That's a really hard. Okay. So as you were painting this, luckily you read the book because you knew that from the book that this was actually.
No, I didn't know. When all this was going on, I had no clue. Although I had read the book, it didn't mean I understood it. Okay, people read a lot of books, but that doesn't mean they really apply it to their everyday experience and everyday life. I had no clue what was going on at the time.
So in retrospect, now that, all these years have passed, in what way do you think, is it a conscious understanding of how you ameliorated your karma and your creativity and how that, and then I can't remember what else it woke up, but what's your sense of what happened after each painting?
Well, the reality is that with each painting I did, I got better. I got better at drawing.
Right.
I got more focused. I got more, and also I became more and more flexible and more expanded. So, but the painting wasn't the only thing that happened between me and him. I mean, there were times when he was really very brutal, very brutal.
Okay, what are the brutal things
verbally
that he did?
Brutal. I'm not telling that he never hit me or anything.
No, but like verbally, so he gave you a disdainful look, and so that was it disdain, or what were the verbal
that
abuses?
Also, it was actually a combination of heaven and hell to be around him.
Wow.
Those 6 years when I was around him every day on his personal staff, it would be heaven when he would, when his glance, when his look at me was pure love. And by the way, there's no love more pure and more amazing than from an enlightened being. It's not like any kind of love that you've ever had. It's so beyond any other kind of love. And so they're shooting you with a bolt of divine love, which is not just love, it's grace and it's blessings. And he did it with his eyes. Other gurus, sometimes they might do it by a touch, but he was able to do it just with his glance. So there would be that. But then other times, the look wouldn't be one of grace. It would be one of disdain or scorn or similar, you might call it like that. And then I just felt like nothing. I just felt completely like I was rejected to the utmost degree.
Yeah.
And by the way, that neither made any sense.
Right. Oh, so it wasn't I love your painting.
He did it.
Yeah. Okay.
That made no sense.
Right. There wasn't a logical sequence between like
Yeah.
this thing I was unhappy now, disdain. Like there was this like random unknown quality.
And
Why some
a
were,
lot of times it was random. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes he was unhappy because of something I had done, but you know,
And so, do you think from his perspective, was he just being a channel of divine wisdom to you? And so he also didn't know why he was doing either giving you love or disdain. What do you think was happening from his end of the equation?
that is a really great question. And I believe, a lot of people wouldn't agree with me, but I believe that he was a channel in that way, that he was really a divine being who was doing what
I keep on getting
spirit
a little Kriya, so
spirit
ignore me.
guided me to do, guided him to do,
Oh,
and
interesting.
that he was just a vessel of God. So that was what I feel about it. Um, you know,
Yeah,
but
so that he was a vessel from God. So did you know it at the time that that was happening, or it was just like I don't know, the rules of
eventually I did.
okay.
It took several years, but then somebody clued me in.
It took several
Someone,
years before someone
oh
cleared you.
yeah, it wasn't until 1994 when he completely reamed me in front of the 400 of the biggest leaders in the organization,
Oh no.
and all the his TM teachers and his international staff, when he reamed me in front of 400 people and made them all think that I was uh, that I was worthless and useless. When he did that in front of everybody, and then they in turn treated me like crap
Oh
because he thought that I
man.
was out of favor with him, completely out of favor.
Yes.
So
Oh.
happily and luckily, some of the old time people who'd been on his staff for much longer than me
Yeah.
came up to me and said, "Hey, you're lucky. What he's just done to you is the most valuable thing it could ever happen to you." And they explained to me the whole process, the whole guru
Wow.
disciple process. Thank goodness I had three different people who did that. And they explained it to me,
Oh.
and they understood because it had happened to them so many times.
So what is
But
the guru
they said
disciple?
they'd never seen him do it in public to a female though.
It's because he just loved you that much.
That's what they told me.
So what's a guru disciple practice? Like what's the unspoken contract or maybe spoken contract that you find out 2 years later?
Yeah, so that was much more than 2 years, by the way.
Okay.
Uh, that was 4 years later.
Okay,
But
four
in
years
any
later.
case, yeah, the contract really is you. Okay, I think I'll backtrack here to explain what the
Sure.
contract is a little
Yeah,
bit. Okay,
sure.
there's a scripture called the Bhagavad Gita.
Hmm.
It's a very famous Indian scripture, probably the most famous one. And in that scripture, there's the guru, and he's Lord Krishna, and he has a disciple, and his name is Arjuna. And and Krishna acts as the charioteer for Arjuna, and they're going into battle. There's a big battle of all the forces of good and evil on the earth are lined up, one side, the other side. And so they're lined up, and Krishna says to Arjuna, "Behold, all of the Kurus on the other side of the battlefield," basically, is what he says. And Kuru, that's the name of the tribe.
Oh, okay.
And as a result of him saying like 5 words to Arjuna, Arjuna he goes into a state of panic. He all of a sudden he's in a fight or flight response.
Mm-hmm.
He's freaking out. He doesn't know what to do. He had been so confident. He had been so sure. He was a great warrior. All of a sudden, his knees were buckling, and he could hardly hold himself together because Krishna said that one sentence, and the one sentence reminded him that on the other side of the battlefield, all of his relatives were standing, and he was about to kill them.
Mm.
So this freaked him out. Now that's exactly how Krishna worked with Arjuna to put him into a state of suspension, so that by him doing that, eventually, after a few verses of this scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, after a while, Arjuna says to Krishna, "I don't know what to do. I surrender at your feet. Please show me what to do." Okay, because he
Oh.
doesn't know what to do. He's in a state of suspension. So what the gurus do is they mess with your mind so much that eventually you realize you just don't know what to do and you need help.
Oh,
So
wow.
once you're in that state, then you can learn from the teacher. And the rest
Interesting.
of the Bhagavad Gita is the teachings that Krishna gives to Arjuna.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
that's just the first chapter. Actually, the first chapter is where Krishna puts Arjuna into the state of suspension. The second chapter is where Arjuna surrenders to Krishna. And then the
Mm.
rest of the book, which I think there's like 16 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, then Krishna gives him the teaching of yoga.
Okay, got it. So really it's about it has to get really bad before you just complete like I don't know what to do. And then like
Give
when
up.
in that moment of like whatevs. It's boom, then the teaching comes. And so the contract is I'm going to keep on beep 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 testing you until you're kind of like, all right, you like criticize me in front of all these people. I feel awful. Like, oh, what do I do now? And then it's like, is that what happened afterwards,
Yeah.
or what happened, or did you keep on getting beat up until you like finally reached a point
I
of help?
got beat up after that too. I mean, I had a big ego. I probably still do, you know?
So what was your
So,
lowest point that you're like, help me, I surrender? Like, when was that point for you?
oh, I don't know if I ever got there, but definitely I stayed a long time with him. And definitely I went through many of these tests.
Mm,
And you use the word test, and yes, they are tests.
mm,
It's like tests and trials. And I was not alone. Everybody else went through it too. Everyone
wow.
else that was around him went through this. And some of the people called it, one guy actually called it open ego surgery because the purpose of everything that he did and that other gurus do, he's not alone. Maharishi's not the only
Right.
guru who does this. It's actually traditional in India. This is a tradition in India and also in other parts of the East, not just India. So it's a tradition among spiritual masters, let's put it that way.
Wow.
So,
Hmm.
so that's what they did, what they do. And the purpose is to dissolve your ego.
Mm,
Because in order for you to become egoless, your ego has to disappear. And
wow.
egolessness is the state of spiritual enlightenment.
Mm,
When you discover who you really are rather than who you think you are, that is spiritual enlightenment.
mm,
So when your ego dissolves, then you know who you really are, which is a divine being, a divine unlimited being. In fact, you're one with God. That's who you really are. Now, I did discover that, but not till after I had left Maharishi and had learned this other method called divine revelation, which is what I teach.
interesting. So I here's the interesting thing about that contract is that in Maharishi's case, you first saw him and his eyes were full of love, like you fell in love with him. And so there's a sense of a trust or holding there, right? There are all sorts of kooky people running around now that I can't remember the one that I just read where these guys like this guy was abusive to these women and there are all these models of guru out there where the
Yeah.
gurus use that model, right, which is like I'm going to verbally abuse you, have you
Mm-hmm.
do weird things on my behalf, including sexual favors, all these kinds of weird things. And so if I understand the model correctly, you may go like, well, that's the model. Like this is how you break down my ego for my enlightenment. So where does one draw the line? Like when do you know if the guru is like, okay, that's just an abusive, weird person, and you need to not be with them.
Right.
And how do you know when it's like, no, this is a guru that I need to stay with?
Yeah. Well, that is a very difficult question because how do you know? That's the thing.
Yeah.
How do you know?
Yeah, I don't know.
And you can only know from your feeling, from what benefit are you getting here? Is it working for you or not? So
So it was working because you had a feeling, a felt sense. You went all the way to India. You stayed after the 3 month class. So was even after having these ego dissolving moments, did you still feel a sense of love and growth? So you're like, okay, I'm still feeling love and growth, so I'm going to continue.
absolutely.
Okay,
Like I
got it.
said, I was in his organization for 22
Yeah, I
years.
guess. Well, I just don't know if you
till
just sort of like,
19 till 1989. I stayed in his organization. I lived in various ashrams, and including the one in Fairfield, Iowa.
wow,
And so I was there till 1989 until my bubble burst, or what shall we say? I kind of got disillusioned for a while there.
right,
By the way, I don't feel disillusioned now about TM or about Maharishi, but I did at that
right.
time in the 1980s.
And so when you reach that point in the 1980s when you're like, okay, I'm going to come up with my own thing, which is the book that you wrote. Was that the book that you wrote? Was it like something that
Divine revelation.
yeah. So is that,
Well,
because
actually, I learned all the methods that are in divine revelation. I learned those from another teacher.
from
I actually, yeah, a
an
different teacher.
incarnated teacher or not
Yes, a
incarnated?
different
Oh,
incarnated teacher.
okay,
Yeah.
God. I thought it was actually a guru, like a spiritual guru who would pass.
Well, that too. Actually, that human guru brought me to a spiritual guru called Babaji.
Okay.
Babaji is an immortal master. In fact, in Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, there are some chapters about Babaji in that book. And that was a book that I originally read about spirituality. And in fact, I've had several visitations from Babaji, physical
Wow.
visitations from that ascended master. And the first one was in 1966, before I ever learned Transcendental Meditation.
Oh my goodness. So do you? Oh my God! I just got like a little shiver.
So did I.
Wow. So
So did I just now. So, yes, Babaji was always my teacher, but it was important for me to have a human guru for some time. So that's the reason why
and then so
I was
how
Maharishi
what
for a
was
long time.
what I mean, it's not one of those things where you're like you didn't give it enough time. Like you like you, like you cuz was he still
No,
alive when
I
he was
had
in
amazing
Iowa?
experiences with Transcendental Meditation.
Yeah.
I had fantastic experiences. I never had anything but wonderful, just mind blowing meditations with TM.
Right. So it wasn't it but well someone I had interviewed and someone who I'm studying with Nataji or Swami Kechanarda, he was saying, I'm probably slaying his name, but he had said he had said that someone had asked him about whether he should see another teacher, and he said you should, because this guy was a Buddhist and he was thinking about doing Tantra Shaivism, which is what Nataji teaches. And he said,
Oh,
I'd like to move over to, I want to switch, switch paths. And Nataji said to him, if you really feel like you've gotten everything from this teacher and you've tried your hardest to get everything from this teacher, then okay. But if you haven't, then no. I really, I mean, you can come, but I wouldn't recommend it.
mhm.
And so, were you at that point? Do you agree with that?
I think that advice that you just related was for that one person.
Okay, got it. Okay, okay. So,
Usually, when enlightened masters give advice, it's only for that person.
oh, that's fascinating.
Jesus once said to somebody, what did he say about the eye of the camel? He said that a rich person can't real. It would be as hard for a rich person to realize God as it is for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. Okay, that was for one person.
No,
That was not for everybody. There are rich people who can become enlightened, folks. You don't have to be poor to be enlightened.
That is
That was a
just
misinterpretation of Jesus.
that is such a
Jesus
great
said a lot of things. Jesus said a lot of things that were for one person.
That's actually such a great insight because we hear these things and we're like, oh, that's what I'm now need to live by, and it may be for that one person, but now all of us are like, that's what Jesus said. I have to do the same thing. That's interesting. I'm so glad that you brought that up. All right. So I know when you come to East West Bookstore, well, okay, I have one other question and then I want to talk about the class that you're teaching the second day when you're at East West Bookstore. So when you actually, I know it's sometimes hard to describe in words, but when you actually reach that point of oneness, how does it feel for you? How would you describe it?
For me,
Mm-hmm.
the experience of oneness,
Or,
the
or
experience of,
yeah, or that place, the samadhi, nirvana, whatever
yeah,
you want to describe it. What does it feel like
right.
for you?
It feels like the little I, the self, has dissolved and become the big I. And the big I is one with God. And that means the experience of no boundary to your body. You're not actually feeling your body at all. You
Mm,
are feeling bliss. You're feeling incredible waves of love. You're feeling there's light all around you, and you're feeling perfection. I don't know how else to describe perfection other than perfection.
yeah.
Is you're feeling that you're in a place that there's no other place to go because it's perfection already. You're there.
Mm, mm,
You're feeling content, perfect contentment. You don't feel like you need anything. There's no needs. There's no desires. It's a state of a perfect wholeness, perfect oneness.
mm,
And perfect oneness means one. You're one. There's no duality. There's no okay, this and that, or seeking something else. Oneness means that's it.
mm,
That's all. It just means one without a second.
mm,
One without a second is how they describe it in the Upanishads. And that's what the experience is. And so that's samadhi.
mm.
And I have to say that transcendental meditation is a great technique to take you to samadhi. It
Mm.
works.
Okay, so
It definitely
let's say
works.
that you're listening to this whole thing and you're like, yeah, no thanks. Like I know that's a contract. I'm just not into whatever
Oh,
that's all
no.
about.
No,
So
being with a guru is not for everybody. That's for darn sure.
yeah. So if being under the guru is not, there's kind of the Home Depot path, right? Like I don't want to be with the guru. I want to do
Yeah.
my own path. What would you say are kind of the advantages or disadvantages of just like, okay, make your own spiritual path?
Make your own spiritual path. Well, um, I wouldn't recommend anyone to make their own spiritual path.
Right.
What I would recommend, however, is for everyone to find the inner guru,
Mm-hmm.
to find the higher self, which is a God within you, which means that now you're in touch with your true nature of being. You're in touch with the inner in-house counselor who will guide you from now on. You don't need a physical guru when you have an inner guru. So
Mm,
that's what I would recommend to somebody who wants to, quote, make their own path.
right.
You don't make your own path. I don't recommend that you make your own path from the level of your ego. That's not going to work.
Oh.
You're not going to get
Oh,
anywhere.
I see. I see. It's like, okay, first I'm going to do like 10 chants and then I'm going to do like you're saying like this is you need to, and so you're coming to East West Bookstore and you're going to be doing the second day is finding your inner guru. So what can one
Yes.
expect by going to that workshop?
Yeah. So finding your inner guru means learning how, by a step by step process that I'm going to teach everyone, how to listen to the still small voice within and how to do that clearly and how to do that precisely and how to break through blockages that prevent you from doing that. And also how to know when it's really that true divine voice and not some other voice. And when I say voice, I don't necessarily mean voice. Not everyone receives their messages through a voice. They might receive visions or feeling, because those are the three basic ways that you receive from spirit. either seeing, feeling, or hearing.
Mm.
So I'm going to help people to be able to connect with their higher self, with the inner guru, with their true divine nature, and learn how to listen to that and hopefully develop the faith to trust what they're getting and to follow that guidance, follow inner guidance.
So when I go to the workshop, will I be able to have some sort of experience with talking to my inner guru afterwards?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely. Yes, that's what it's an experiential workshop, meaning you're going to have the experience of it, not just talk about it.
got
I
it.
never I never
Well,
just
sometimes
talk
people just
about
talk
things.
about it and you don't experience
I
it. And
know.
then, like, you go home and you're
I
like,
know.
and then also sometimes you experience it on, like, so for example, I did a class there and the person was teaching me about auras. And
Hmm.
with his presence, I saw the auras. Now, when he left, I didn't see the aura. So there was something about the energetic holding space that he enabled that allowed me to see the auras. But without him, that ability was gone. So it's something that's sustainable without, like,
It's
we'd all love to see.
sustainable if you practice it.
Yeah.
It's not something that just, oh, okay, instantly now I'm an expert. No, people don't become experts on a weekend workshop. I'm, sorry to have to break it to you
No, but
folks.
like if I go
You
to
don't
your
become
workshop, I have to
experts
practice
in 5 minutes.
afterwards. Yeah.
Yes,
So
you
you're
do
like,
have
if
to
you go
practice.
and you're not like, I found my inner guru and I like didn't find it the next day. It's like, well, you have to keep on practicing.
Exactly.
Well, no, because sometimes people kind of get disappointed because they don't know. Like I was disappointed after that aura class because I'm like,
Yeah.
well, and did I practice? No. I mean, to be
No,
fair, I also didn't practice because I guess I didn't want it that badly, so I didn't
that's
practice.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
People have to be motivated.
Okay, so we've been talking to Susan Chomsky, who has been talking about her experience in her book, Maharishi and Me, Seeking Enlightenment with the Beatles Guru. Thank you so much. You're always such a
Well,
pleasure to have on the
thank
show.
you. It's always a joy to be on your show.
Thank you.